Topic of challenges and prospects. This is a mission which is a national mission, and all of us individuals are committed to that. And when we say that we look at what Honorable Prime Minister had said, that India has to be a Viksit Desh, and along with that, a Surakshit Desh. And that is where all of us come into contribution as our duties. That is what is the kartavya which we all have to perform. And the moment we all chip in, no challenges remain challenges. They all become easy pathways. And we all are very capable individually. Let us put in a team effort, and I'm sure we will hear from everyone here on the stage as well as in the audience also. And our foreign friends who are here from the industry, just a small piece of advice that the rules of the game are different now. Everything happens from India. So it is better that we start looking at the way ahead. And there are enough competent people here who will hold your hand, and a joint venture will work beautifully. The friends from the Foreign Defense Attaché community, it's always a pleasure to see you here. This conclave was essentially for you, and it is very good to see you in good numbers. In case somebody feels he needs to clarify more, we all are available here after this session. Please link up with us and we'll facilitate all that you need to know. Let us get on to the discussion now, and subsequently we will clarify further.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for laying down the context. In fact, the topic today is Atmanirbharta, prospects and challenges. And the panel here, I think, is beautifully divided with two very strong OEMs who know this market very well, and two Indian industries giving their viewpoint. So the plan for the discussion is that we will give about 5 minutes preamble to each speaker on the panel. In that 5 minutes, try and please give your viewpoint. And thereafter, we'll have another round. And then I will request General Khandare to give his views on the complete discussion which has taken place, with his tremendous experience of having taken care of the policy and seen it from all sides. So I'll request you to sum it up in the answer. So coming down to, also we have a representative from MIDC. I think MIDC does play, or for that matter, all industrial parks do play a major role in shaping up the environment. You're the catalyst. So when we talk about the prospects, I'll request you to chip in and give your viewpoint how those prospects can actually be realized and how can those dreams be translated into reality. So I'll request your viewpoints on that. So with this as the background, let's move on to Dr. Sundararaman, who's sitting on my right. Dr. Raman, 5 minutes with your views on the subject.
Thank you, Mr. Bhatia, and I'll keep it very concise. Friends, I come from a blended company. I run textiles. Most people will be wondering what's technology in textiles. I'd like to speak about that, but 80% or more of what we do as a company is non-defense. We came into this business about 10 years back when there was a need to create a CBRNE product, a chemical biological nuclear reactor response suit in India that would be world class. The DRDO they had the carbon, which is the core, and they came to us. They were trying for a year. We had alternative technologies, and we were able to make what they wanted in about 48 hours. Our journey started there. We are today we're the only TOT holder for CBRNE clothing in the country. We are one among probably about 8 companies in the world that have this capability at this stage. There exists technology in textiles in the field that we work in, particularly in the areas of cold weather clothing. My friend there is in bulletproof area. And there are a few critical areas, which is the regular stuff that you would use on a day-to-day basis. not as exotic as the ammunition and the weapon systems and the more sophisticated products that are out there, but essential nonetheless. It's been a 10-year journey where we have seen complete cold weather clothing systems being imported into this country 10 years back to today, almost nothing being imported. And we are at I would say, a flux point. Today, we are seeing technologies develop within this country that are not existing outside. We have become technology creators. We are now playing with materials like graphene for creating ultra-compact cold weather systems that would probably be class leading on a world stage. And I think the time for India has come, and we are very happy to be here. It's Bharat Shakti. I think that it can't be more apt than naming it as Bharat Shakti. And it's wonderful. I think our time has come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sundararaman, for pitching the Indian context in the Atmanirbharta. I have on my right a very close friend, Bill Blair. He heads one of the big 500, not 500, maybe 5,000 pound gorilla in the manufacturing world for the defense manufacturing. And he's seen the policy changes which have been going on for some time in the country now. So I would like him to give his viewpoint on what are the challenges which he sees as we go forward with so-called Atmanirbharta for this country. Press that.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Yeah, you can. Good, good. Well, thank you, Mr. Bhatia and General Khandare. I'm really pleased and thank Bharat Shakti for bringing us together. I was lucky to be part of the last two sessions, and it was remarkable when we were here in 2020 in a I guess a lower point going through the COVID pandemic, and we were all pleased to be together in person. My remarks that I'll make in response to the question and the topic are based on my experience in India over the last 26 years. I first came to India in '96 and spent 11 of the last 26 years here in India in 3 different roles. I started out as an aircraft engine designer, mechanical engineer, and now I'm here representing Lockheed Martin. It's been a great journey. But I've seen the evolution, the policy evolution, but more importantly, the capability evolution here in India in the aerospace and defense sector. I think what I can speak both on my current role and prior roles here, when we sought to engage companies in India, I worked with BharatForge Limited a decade ago as well, we were looking for partners that could produce to meet global requirements and then position to meet the emerging Indian requirements. And this was very much the case in the MMRCA back in the mid-2000s. And so we, Lockheed Martin, we've been associated with India for 70 years. We've really been part of, I will say, part of the journey of Make in India over the last 12 years. We partnered with Tata, 2 joint ventures, and I'm going to use them as 2 good examples. We started positioning for the C-130J requirement. 12 C-130Js are operating with the Indian Air Force, and we knew we had to get out in front of that. So we established a joint venture with Tata, a 26% stake, to assemble the C-130J empennage, the tail, to meet the entire global requirement, sole supplier out of Hyderabad. Now, today, we've delivered well over 180 empennages, over 90% indigenous content, and driving well over 30–40% of the cost out at higher quality. So I think it's a great example of actually, as a company, Lockheed Martin, investing early, but yes, finding a partner, meet a global requirement, and then position to meet an Indian requirement. And you all know Tata is now positioned to deliver C-295s in partnership with Airbus at a complete aircraft level. Similarly, Sikorsky wasn't part of Lockheed Martin at the time, partnered with Tata to produce S-92 helicopter cabins, delivered 157, again, over 87% indigenous content and driving cost out. And now we're in a position to deliver helicopters to meet the Indian Navy Naval Utility Helicopter requirement or the IMRH requirement. And so what's my point? I think the private sector has demonstrated the ability to build both at the system level and the full platform level to meet a global requirement as well as position to meet Indian requirements. And L&T earlier, I think is a great example of that as well on the shipbuilding side and on the land system side. We've also worked with. So what's the challenge? I think going forward is with the positive indigenization list or import substitution, the much higher indigenous content requirements at 50%. So coupled with policy changes that encourage higher foreign direct investment, now up to 74% on the automatic route, that's great. I think it's going to be really important and incumbent upon the services to determine what's the pace at which we drive the indigenous content. The light combat aircraft is a great example. It's tremendous, but it didn't start out at 50% indigenous content. It's been on a journey to get to and above 50% indigenous content. I think we need to look at the multi-role fighter aircraft in the same spirit, or the naval utility helicopter, or IMRH, as to leverage our capabilities, but still push for the best system capability. We work with our tier 1 suppliers, and we encourage them, more than encourage them, we engage them through our supplier conferences to establish Indian partners on the systems, our tier 1 suppliers. When I mentioned the C-130J empennage as an example, 87 or 90% indigenous content, over 300 suppliers are feeding into that. So offsets might have been a catalyst, but frankly, the outcome has been, I think, through Make in India, really accelerating the ecosystem here in India. One last comment, and I might be over time, but Mr. Bhatia and I were talking just a few weeks ago. I think the biggest challenge for us for self-reliance has been revealed through COVID and the recent Russian invasion of Ukraine. And no one can dispute supply chain resilience is our single most important issue facing all of us. Doesn't matter who you speak to, it's universal. And I think working together on that supply chain resilience is both our greatest challenge and our greatest opportunity. And I would submit aerospace and defense, strategic materials, and rare earth metals, whether it's for aerospace and defense, space-based applications, or even semiconductors, that's where we need to work together. And I think you'll find with like-minded nations, initiatives bilaterally under the Quad, under the I2U2, it's the single greatest challenge and opportunity, I think, for us for self-reliance, Atmanirbharta, going forward.
Thank you, Bill. In fact, the point regarding the strategic materials, rare earth metals, I think this is becoming the key point. And I would like Bharat Shakti that when you do compile certain recommendations or discussion points out of various sessions, I think this should be one critical point which should be taken up. Because there cannot be a large-scale manufacturing in the country if these supply chains are not secured, and not secured only at the level of the finished material, but at the raw material stage. So I think this is a very important point, and I think we will put it as a part of recommendation. Now moving on, let's take the views of another Indian manufacturer, and I have General Oberoi sitting on my left. So with the same conditions, take 3 to 5 minutes and just give your viewpoint on the subject.
Coming on to Atmanirbharta, well, now that I've seen both sides of the hill, 38 years in the army and 10 years in the corporate sector, I can now well say with confidence that Atmanirbharta in a true sense comes to a soldier when he uses our equipment, when he uses a weapon system, and he has the confidence that yes, it is not going to fail me in war. And I gave the example of the bulletproof jackets being supplied by my company to the Indian Army. 1,86,000 bulletproof jackets supplied, much against the time, also during the COVID period. And with all these supplied and being used for over now 3 years by the soldiers, the bullet has not gone through even a single jacket. So therefore, Atmanirbharta, overall, if we see, it's a very, very broad subject. We have to go equipment-wise, item-wise. So there we get, in this particular product, yes, we can say with confidence that we get the Atmanirbharta, because the product is of such quality. I'm not saying that product could be of the best quality in the world. No, army is not asking for that, nor the defense forces. They are asking for a good product which will stand them in good stead in war. And next is when we are coming to the ammunition. I've also seen that in the ammunition aspect also, our country really required to enlarge the manufacturing base. And in a situation like, let's say, in a Ukraine or a Russian war-like situation where the country has to go in for a prolonged time to fight a conflict or a war, you have to be self-sustained or self-reliant yourself. You cannot be looking over your shoulders, and we had some problems in Kargil war. Like for Russia, they could sustain because they had a good and a very large manufacturing base, and the Ukrainians could sustain because they had good friends helping them. But if we ever get into such a situation of a prolonged conflict, we have got no choice to be dependent on our own. And that is how my company has decided to get into now the next vertical, that is the ammunition manufacturing also. And we are starting off with the manufacturing of state-of-the-art ammunition, both for the artillery guns and the tanks. So therefore, sir, I feel Atmanirbharta, in a very broad perspective, we have to see. It will not come in a day. It will not leapfrog. It will take its own time.
Thank you, General Oberoi. I think he reinforced the point that Atmanirbharta is no longer a matter of choice, but it is a compulsion for the nation. So while we have been talking about so-called opportunities and challenges, a very large, not very large, but significant number of Indian OEMs are based out of the state of Maharashtra. And Mr. Abhijit, would you like to give your opening remark on the subject?
Thank you very much, Mr. Bhatia. Let me at the outset extend my heartfelt thanks and extend a sense of gratitude towards Mr. Nitin Gokhale and the entire team of Bharat Shakti for organizing this fabulous defense conclave, and thereby bringing together on a common platform the corporates, the experts, and the policymakers and the institutes. This is to the success of this conclave. Well, talking about the state of Maharashtra, Maharashtra, as you understand, is the most industrialized state in the country. It is the largest subnational economy of the size of 420 billion US dollars, which contributes the highest, that is 14% to the national GDP. Again, the highest, 15% to the total industrial output of the nation, 20% to India's exports in terms of value. It has accounted for almost 30% of the total foreign direct investment that has come into India since 2000 till date. It has the single largest pool of skilled manpower in the country. So these are the strengths, and of course, as you mentioned, Mr. Bhatia, the presence of the large OEMs and equally a presence of MSMEs, which are very crucial to the defense and aerospace sector. Martin just underscored the need for strengthening the supply chain, in which MSMEs play such a crucial role. If India were to achieve a stream of attaining a $5 trillion economic status, then it goes unsaid that Maharashtra must realize its ambition of becoming the first $1 trillion economy in the country. And for that, under our industrial policy, we have shortlisted 14 priority sectors, which are the engines of Maharashtra's economic growth. We need to fire those engines in order to realize the dream. And of course, defense and aerospace is one of the priority sectors. We contribute 21% to the national output and 42% to the national export. If we were to segregate arms and ammunition, then our contribution is 30% to the nation's share. What I think is required is we need to have a conducive ecosystem in terms of institutes, both in the public sector as well as corporates in the private sector. We need to have an enabling policy framework. As you're aware that Maharashtra is the first state in the country to come out with a dedicated defense and aerospace policy. And we need to come out with policy incentives, fiscal and non-fiscal incentives, which create the enabling atmosphere which attract investment in the state, domestic as well as international. I will stop at that. I would just mention that in spite of the disruption caused by COVID, during the last 2 years, the state was able to successfully attract huge investments. We inked MOUs with 123 companies to the tune of 2.70 lakh crores. Added to that, the foreign direct investment we attracted during the last 2 years is 2.80 lakh crores. So together with the regular investment that we get in the state, which is 62,000 crores, the total investment attracted is to the tune of 6 lakh crores, that is 86 billion US dollars. That is the success story of Maharashtra. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhijit ji, for outlining the work going on in Maharashtra. But there's one point which I want to highlight, which came out of your talk. We all keep hearing about Indian economy touching 5 trillion. And then there is also a underlying principle that the manufacturing must go up from 16% to 25%, which means that manufacturing, which is around $450 billion today, needs to become $1 trillion. And that manufacturing can only come with a significant portion coming from defense and aerospace, which has got large number of white spaces. Now, while this is the desire, the fact of the matter is that when we talked about the pie, 80 odd thousand crores, which was what was mentioned, if you see the last 5 years growth, it does not say that we are moving in that direction of from 400 billion to 1 trillion. And hence the session which was held before us, which was dealing with exports, probably does provide an opportunity, but the question will come that have you supplied it to your own armed forces? And that's where the real question comes, that we need to become greater providers of our equipment to our armed forces, and that will give us the right momentum to achieve what we are looking at. So this was just because you mentioned 5 trillion, and 5 trillion will only be achieved when manufacturing is 1 trillion. So let's all work towards that. And one person who has seen it from very close quarters, and I'm again going to come to General Khandare. So General Khandare, would you like to say something into this? But before I come to them, my apologies. We have another very strong foreign OEM, and we have Mr. Andleeb Shadman. Would you like to share your views on the, I would say, the prospects and the challenges which Atmanirbharta have thrown at you?
Absolutely. Greetings to everyone. Well, it's an interesting position to be Indian and to represent foreign OEM. And that's a balancing act that I would definitely do today. So for those of you, if you have not heard the name Hensoldt, it's not your fault. Because this name came into existence in 2017, so not very old. And of course the name is new, but the technology heritage is coming from more than 100 plus years. I mean, we have been the part of EADS or Casidian or Airbus Defense and Space Defense Electronics Business Unit. So that has been our heritage. Plus, we works closely with many Indian companies in the background in developing some of the indigenous products. So you won't see the Hensoldt name much prominent in much forefront. That is one of the reasons. Coming back to what we do, the Hensoldt, we do systems from the social media monitoring to airborne SIGINT. We do a radar which can detect the UAVs for the counter drone radar, to the radar which flies on the fighter aircraft as a fire control. And we do electro-optics right from the handheld to something which goes to a James Webb telescope. So that's a kind of a spectrum of the product that I'm talking about. Coming back to very specific questions about Atmanirbharta or the self-reliance, and I'm sure that for almost every foreign OEM, this was the change. This was the change, and it follows a similar cycle of the change. That's, first of all, you start thinking, oh my God, does it mean that there will be no place of a foreign OEM in India? Is it going to be the case that we will be out of business? So that's from where it starts. And then slowly you start analyzing, you start mending your ways, you making the strategies around the frameworks, and then you evolve a new business model. And that's exactly what we have done. So in order to contribute to the self-reliance of India in the defense sectors, Hensoldt has come up with a very, very attractive and interesting business model. And when I say this, I say this with the confidence and responsibility that we are going much beyond build to print and a local production. We are talking to the Indian companies, for some cases, a complete design and IPR transfer. For some cases, we are discussing a co-production of the equipment in which we would share a kind of a we will have a market share and as well as the product share. In addition to a normal, regular, the transfer of technology-based local production business. So that's the crux. We believe that this is the only way in which we can contribute, the true intent of being self-reliant. But it also doesn't mean that we would be going out of a business. The business model is woven in such a way that in one hand, India and Indian industry is gaining a lot of self-reliance, but from the foreign company point of view, we are also in the supply chain or in the game.
Thank you so much, Mr. Andleeb Shadman, for having forgotten to ask you before asking General Khandare. Let me do a bit of marketing for you. I have been to your plants and works number of times in the period 2006 to 8. EADS, it was known as then. And some of the finest technologies in TR modules were witnessed by us in your plant. And we are fully aware, and we also know, if people have not heard this name, they have surely heard the name called Telefunken. And that is the mother brand from where you came. So I hope now all is forgotten, having forgotten you to give your views. So after this marketing for Hensoldt, let's now get to General Khandare. And General Khandare, sir, I think with the time left with us, I would request you to sum up the views given by people, and then we will open our discussion to the House for some questions.
Thank you, Colonel Bhatia, sir. And a pleasure to see you conduct and give everyone an opportunity to explain to the people here that there's a bright future, and what we all need to do is what you have all outlined, which is extremely good. I want to specifically highlight issues like Dr. Sundararaman, you mentioned that textiles may not be something glamorous, but a person like me, when I was on the glacier, I knew what a clothing meant. So I think extremely important for us to have our own clothing with a lot of pride and a lot of protection and comfort. So we look forward to more development and more progress in that. And that is one sector where we can set global standards. So that is something which you all can look forward to. And Mr. Will, the way you explained 90% indigenization is a very good content, and more important than that, what you said is the way you have progressed and the cost cutting and the capability to manufacture more. This is exactly what is the mantra for going ahead. And I think every industrialist would want to hear these stories. And I think that is a lesson for all of us to learn. General Oberoi, again, a very respected senior of mine, and he's mentioned about the bulletproof jackets, something during COVID period, the way the soldiers have been kitted with indigenous bulletproof jackets is a matter of pride as well as fulfillment of our responsibility towards the soldiers. So while business can continue, I think the national responsibility is extremely important. Mr. Abhijit, it's really wonderful to hear the success story of Maharashtra. And I think one thing I want to add there, what obviously you would have mentioned it, Maharashtra has done something more than just allocating land and doing encouragement, is arranging for finance. That is something extremely good that Maharashtra government has done. And that is an initiative of the dynamic leadership in the state. The more number of startups and MSMEs keep coming up, there is a continuous requirement of finances, and that's something which Maharashtra government has done really well. So compliments to the entire lot of apex level decision makers and the ones who have executed that. Now coming to the aspect of even Colonel Bhatia had mentioned a few things about how we have to ensure that before we go in for exports, the in-service equipment tag has to be achieved. And I think the policy part has been taken care of. At a stage, we used to look only at L1, but now I think we are going for L1, L2, so more number of people available to export, and that's not only for export but even the scales of manufacturing, because a single manufacturer may not be able to achieve that, and we are always tight for time. Unless we are able to supply everything within a limited time frame, the technology gets outdated. So the whole idea is to bring in equipment at the earliest, and that policy decision has been taken, implemented also. And more and more attitude shaping amongst the users has also been done. You would see a difference between how it used to happen earlier and how it is happening now. A little bit of a push and pull will continue to happen, considering the COVID pattern also. We continue to do well, and the supply chain assurance is definitely a must. Strategic materials and the chips, and the government is totally focused towards that. It's only a question of time, and I'm sure we'll head towards a better future. With that, I will put a stop to my remarks, and Colonel Bhatia, sir, again we can take on the questions.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving the overall perspective and summing up every speaker's point so, I would say, well. This also, I totally endorse the viewpoint given by the chairperson that policy is more or less in place. But probably one thing which really needs to be done, and you did mention COVID, is probably breaking those silos which still exist. If you recall, during the COVID times, India worked without silos. You know, people were cutting across ministries, cutting across companies, cutting across departments, and with a single aim. That's how you were able to produce 5, 7 vaccines nobody else could do. That's how we could vaccinate 2 billion people and still going strong. And that's how we tackled that kind of thing which we need to do for defense. So my point would be only one, that if we need to achieve, need to exploit what we call the prospects and overcome the challenges, what we need is 2 things. One is breaking silos, working as a nation together, and secondly, bridging that trust deficit which still remains. Today we saw one more notification on custom duty exemption. A good thing to move, but there are many such small little deficits which need to be plugged. But we are in the right direction. No longer is it a question whether it will happen. If at all, the question is when it will happen. And that is the path which we all embarked upon. So with this, I think we have time for question answers. Let's throw this discussion open to the House. Anyone? Any questions, please? General Chakravarti, sir, has been raising his hand, please.
At the outset, I would like to thank General Khandare and Bhatia, sir. I think but it doesn't have the back. Come on, okay. My question is to my dear friend Bill Blair. He wouldn't be recognizing me. I had very, very deep interaction with him. And the deepest interaction is when I bought the iPad and I met him at the Taj Mansingh. And he said it's going to transform my life. It did transform, I must tell you, Bill. Now, you mentioned something great. 90% indigenization. I just have returned from Dallas-Fort Worth, where your headquarters is. The United States, Canada, and Germany. Let me give you some statistics. The iPad, which we discussed, has got about more than major proportion coming from China even today. Boeing today is just an integrator. Bulk of the products are coming from outside. I remember Ambassador Mulford addressing us at the National Defense College. And he said, see, if you're going to waste your time in making all these things, like I remember a Mahindra person came and told me, why should India make engines? What is the point in wasting our time? Why do you want 90% when you as a country, you don't do any of these things? I was surprised in Texas when I found that the vegetables are all being grown in Mexico. And there was an occasion when about 78 people came in the trucks and you stopped those trucks and you had vegetable shortage. US doesn't even grow vegetables. What is this indigenization over self-reliance? You mean to say the US is not self-reliant? You mean to say that you today, Lockheed Martin at Dallas-Fort Worth makes every part? Certainly not. So why are we today so, shall we say, paranoid that when we say all this, it should be 90%? I don't think so. What we need is integration, be able to manufacture a product, and it should be available to us at a point of time. Why is the 90%, 95%? Even Abdul Kalam, with whom I had the pleasure of working, never made such statements. I would request your views, sir.
Yeah, no. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? No? Great. Mr. Chakraborty, great to see you again. And I remember those conversations actually a decade ago. Let me clarify. When I said 90% indigenous content, that's on the C-130J empennage. And we started at importing the parts, and we evolved it over time, engaging, and actually I will say accelerating the aerospace and defense ecosystem to be able to get to that level of indigenous content. But I agree with you, actually. I think the light combat aircraft is a great example of integrating the best capabilities you have on hand at the time, and then start to evolve and develop and advance the indigenous capabilities that I would say earn their way on the aircraft, such that you are pushing to have the best capability, world-class capability, to meet the Indian Air Force requirement, but now to be considered by Malaysia, I think, is a good example of the light combat aircraft, right? So I came from an aircraft engine background. We were never, yes, I'll say, you know, you're integrating capabilities from trusted suppliers from around the world, one. And two, when we worked on joint ventures for aircraft engines, you weren't working with a country that was trying to have 100% of the capability. You were trying to marry two capabilities and advance, you know, the indigenous capability in that country you're partnered with. But that's true, I think, at a platform level. say with a multi-role fighter aircraft that we're offering when the competition comes up, we want to find, you know, trusted partners in India, and then also our tier ones that can find, that might be globally based, that could find partners in India. But the challenge will be, what's that threshold indigenous content that both meets world-class capability that the Indian Air Force requires, as well as being able to evolve that to a point where you can export it. And I think that's where the challenge lies. And finding that balance. And so rather than pure import substitution, 100% indigenization list, what's the transition plan to not over-compromise on capability while still creating the catalyst to develop it here in India? And last comment, because I didn't make it earlier, it's speed, simplicity, and self-confidence. We need faster requirements, we need faster procurements, and we need to get into production and delivering that capability in here in India so we get more quickly to the ability to export that capability. And I think speed is probably one of our biggest challenges. I've heard Indian companies saying, I'm not getting the orders, but I'm making the investments. We're investing to meet a global requirement so that as and when the Indian requirements come up, we can meet that. So we're starting to build fighter wings in Hyderabad well in advance of a fighter aircraft requirement. So those are the things that I think, again, speed is going to help us hopefully get to the higher indigenous content faster.
If I can just add my viewpoint on this. Sir, trying to talk about 100%, 90% is not really the key. The key lies in having the knowledge of the system integration and I would say control over the critical technologies. That is the key. I don't think 100% indigenization or 100% for any country, for any product is possible. You will still import some transistors, something, but if you can design the card, you can design the algorithm, you can design those items, it's perfectly all right. So there'll be commodity products and there'll be critical technology. If we have control over the critical technologies, Atmanirbharta is achieved. That's the key. That's the way I look. Jan Khandare, would you like to, or you want to say something, sir?
Yeah, so first of all, I like your question. That's, I think, being the part of the defense electronics company and the kind of a product that we are talking about, localization in the defense electronics product, where you have a supply chain which may not necessarily be in India, plus most of the new products, or let's say state-of-the-art defense electronics products, they are designed considering two very important aspects. First thing is design for exportability and doing the little bit of a cost reduction. This means that there will be a more and more use of the commercial off-the-shelf electronics in the design of the latest electronics product. And it also means that will be less and less proprietaryship or a very specific things. This means that the real IP lies in the system integration and how the whole system is envisaged together. When you give this know-how, or let's say you, as a part of the transfer of technology, and you ask an Indian company, okay, here, this is what it is, can you do it? Then the Indian company would figure out that, okay, so this chip you buy from that company, this PCB you buy from that company, and most of those companies may not be present in India and may not be present. They're a global company. You don't know from where these things would come. So this, the indigenous content per se is definitely a challenge for defense electronics. I fully agree there.
Thank you. Anyone else with any other question? This could be the last question for this session. So I think there are no more questions. Nilanjana, over to you.
Thank you very much. Could I have a round of applause for that session we just had? May I please request Mr. Sri Krishna from Lokesh Machines Limited to please come up and present mementos to the chair of this session, the moderator, and our panelists. A memento to General Khandare, the chairperson of this session. A memento to the moderator, Sri Rajinder Singh Bhatia. Sir, I promised you. Absolutely. Mementos to our panelists now. Dr. S.K. Sundararaman, MD Shiva Texyarn Limited. Major General Anil Oberoi, President Defence SM Group of Companies. Mr. William Blair, Vice President and Chief Executive India, Lockheed Martin. Mr. Andleeb Shadman, MD, Hensoldt Private Limited. And Mr. Abhijit Ghorpade, GM Marketing and PR, MIDC. Thank you very much. Can we get together for a group photograph, please? Can I have a round of applause, please? And I hope everyone's smiling. I can't see from here. Are you all smiling? Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. So we have 3 more sessions to go. Who is smiling the most? I promised him a memento. Of course he will smile. Okay. We are going to break into another tea break. This will be a slightly longer, it's going to be high tea, because I'm sure all of you need a bit of fueling up, because we have 3 more very exciting and very important sessions to go, as you would have seen in the agenda. We will reassemble in exactly 25 minutes. I request you to visit our kiosks, very painstakingly put up. I request you to please interact with our kiosk partners. And I will see you in 25 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.